Welcome, this is IDology, the industrial design podcast. My name is Voytek, and here I get to pick the brains of industrial design experts. Before the Industrial Revolution, the craftsmen dictated what could be done, how it could be done, and how it could look. After the Industrial Revolution, manufacturing and design split and began pushing each other out of their comfort zones for the good of all people. Today, Anita Rogoża and Mikołaj Wiewióra, both very experienced product design experts from Mindsailors, sat down with me to discuss how manufacturing and design both push each other forward. Let's dive in. Okay, should we start?
Why not?
Mikołaj, how did it come to be that there was this tug of war between designers and manufacturers, and was it always like that?
I believe it was always like that. I haven't lived 100 years ago, so it's just my assumption that it was the same, like the technology and so-called design was always in a fight. Like how to make things from our imagination and how to imagine things that are novel, that are a little bit beyond the technology already existing. So I think that this battle started some time ago. I don't know how many years ago, how many centuries ago, but it didn't finish, and I think it won't finish soon.
Yeah, but I guess we can assume that before mass manufacturing, the designer and the manufacturer was one. Like it was the craftsman, sort of, right?
Certainly, of course, that was a little bit different through the time. It wasn't always looking like today. Like we are designers, there are manufacturers, there are supply chain specialists. So this market has evolved, and the evolution is maybe throughout this century, because as you already mentioned before, it was rather a craftsmanship, a single product per single person that was simply made with known to them technologies without any other possibilities.
And limited to their personal skill.
Sure, limited to their personal skill, material knowledge,
Tools.
Or access to the materials in that were different in different regions.
Yeah, in different parts of the world,
Yeah, the supply chains were quite shorter than they are now, for example.
Definitely. There were some regions that were specializing in such in few technologies or few products that they were doing. Like we always hear that the Chinese pottery is something known all over the world. Maybe for a reason, because they had the technology, they had skills to make porcelain. Maybe that's the fact.
Yeah, okay. And in this history of the constant pushback between designers and manufacturers, do you know of any, maybe pivotal, maybe not pivotal, but like a moment in time where things maybe got separated? The designer and the manufacturer were, no longer one person.
I think that that was a time when mass manufacturing was
Emerging.
emerging,
yeah.
was more and more established branch of the market. Simply,
it came to be as a new industry, like a totally
Certainly.
new industry.
Well, during the Industrial Revolution, industry became a thing, because before that there wasn't such a possibilities to mass produce or to scale up making objects.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Industrial Revolution with the steam machines probably was the far beginning of what we have today. And I think that we could come up with an example of course, automotive, because it is one of the most sophisticated markets in the world. Requirements are really tough to manufacture such assemblies as cars. So Henry Ford maybe was the pioneer of splitting our profession from manufacturing and splitting for manufacturing and design. Because someone had to imagine the thing, how to make it, and the other group of people, because it was no longer one person, should think how to make it cheap enough so that people can buy it and use for extended period of time.
Ford sort of, I don't know if they introduced or perfected the assembly line, production line.
I believe he invented this to be finally economically satisfying for him and for his company, because maybe some trials were before with and different companies were trying to manufacture their products massively or in series. But I think that history says that that Henry Ford was the main inventor of the assembly line and the main inventor of mass manufacturing methods.
Yeah, but before manufacturing or design got to that point with cars, I assume they started somewhere else. It's not like the first thing they thought of was assembly line, production line. Let's design for for that sort of convenience of production. The first cars weren't manufactured that way, right?
Of course, the Ford T, which we are talking about, was first mass manufactured car. It wasn't the first car ever. Of course, there were a lot of different companies making cars, but it was more towards this period that we already mentioned, like craftsmanship, where simply there weren't much skilled people with the skills required for mass production. So it always is located in time. It's not being a craftsman and doing something till 25th of May, and on 26th of May you are simply doing something differently. No, it's not like that. It always has a transition period. And during this transition period, craftsmen were really skilled people to bring them from transitioning from horses to cars. So cars were looking like horse caps at the beginning, because they have to have wheels, some box-shaped shelter for people, and this led people from early automotive industry to hire people that were already skilled in making horse caps. And that transition was the beginning of automotive and manufacturing, but still materials were the same. It was wood. Metal was introduced a few decades later.
Yeah, and function was basically the same, like to cover people moving somewhere in their vehicle.
Definitely. And the speeds were the same, basically. The early cars were not moving as fast as today. They were rather a little bit faster or sometimes even slower than running horse. So that wasn't the case to take care of any other aspects of design. This design was functional, was using the materials and technologies already known by people. But the transition was in different space of needs of people. So looking at that, the technology was a little bit behind the needs. So when the needs came through and something had to change, we had to adjust the technology a little bit. Maybe search for some materials like metals, like soft materials to cover the roofs so that the whole assembly is not that heavy, so that the cars could lift it or move it with their low power engines, really low power. It was a single horsepower, single digits, and probably that's why horsepower also came to real, so that you were replacing one physical horse with an engine that could produce the force made by horses, and it stays with us.
So that was, from what I understand, the first sort of push from designers to manufacturers. Basically, the clients, the users, forced some sort of change. In order to the supply to meet the demand, they had to change the manufacturing technology to be able to produce enough of units to be sold.
I don't think that the users were the main group of, because now we are thinking of users. But then I think it was, there were other problems, like a huge pollution in cities when there were a lot of horses. So there was a lot of
Feces.
Yes. So this maybe brought some solutions on how to transport people differently. So, and how to make it affordable. And maybe this was the reason to push manufacturers forward, so that finally people could benefit from these innovations. But for that time, I'm not pretty sure that users were most important in that riddle.
Okay. But that was the sort of beginning of the assembly line, the production line, and it spread all around the world, basically to every single industry that we can think of today. But there's still a huge gap between what you just described and what we know today. So what was the next sort of pivotal push between manufacturers and designers that pushed everything forward, sort of?
So I think that one of those things were definitely computer-aided softwares, because this was the partially very technical thing and partially very creative, because you were making the design in that software. And at first, I think the whole story started somewhere in the 50s with the first scholar experiments with computer-aided design. But later on in the 80s, the whole thing were progressing. And in the heavy industries, in the automotive, like Mikołaj said, the computer-aided software was a very important tool for making the optimized decision. And at first, they were very exclusive because they were very closely combined with what, machinery, for example, some car company has in their workshops. So that was the tool to... for the design team, for example, talk with the workshop team so that they can more faster and make solutions for assembly lines, for example. And that was, as I said, very exclusive, partially because all of the computers and all of the machines that have computing power were very expensive. So it wasn't something that was accessible for the many engineers around the world. But with the PC revolution, with the computer expansion and development, these things became more accessible and cheaper.
So you mean like 80s or 90s past century?
Yeah, I think that somewhere in the 90s, when their quite powerful PC computers became accessible for people, many engineers or even many customers were able to buy themselves some very simple CAD software that were pushing their imagination and maybe pushing different smaller and lighter types of industry forward.
Okay, so this sort of, I wouldn't say maybe niche, but very narrow group of experts that were able to use this software, that were also probably very in sync and in communication with manufacturers or their own manufacturing facilities. Suddenly they sort of, I wouldn't say that lost anything, but their group suddenly expanded by hundreds of thousands, probably, of people, not necessarily skilled or experienced people, because like you said, anyone who had a personal computer at their home and could afford both the PC and the software could start being a designer. So I assume that was a huge
democratization of imagination.
Democratization of imagination.
Yeah.
No, but the landscape of designers suddenly changed, right?
Right.
Oh.
And I've got one thing to add, because this perspective of skilled people, when you said that, is shifting today rapidly. Because for now, we've got lots of designers, we've got lots of manufacturers, they have CNC machines, they've got a lot of sophisticated technologies in-house, but we are approaching times when we are going to lack specialists and people skilled enough to do some manual work that is still one of the most important skills in manufacturing facility, because the so-called human touch is nearly impossible to avoid when doing something really precisely.
You mean not everything can be automated?
Yes, not everything can be automated. Like if you are, for example, manufacturing a tool for mass manufacturing, you have to calibrate or you have to polish the surfaces nearly perfectly. And for now, we don't know any technology that is better than human with those finishing touches, of course. You can chemically polish all the surfaces, but if you have to simply match the mold parts together, still the human is the most skilled person in this factory.
Okay,
human is a person, something obvious. So
person as a human.
Yes, person as a human. So it's really important to have these specialists nowadays, even if we have this much technology.
That's quite interesting, because I thought of a different challenge that we are slowly approaching, that it's quite visible in the design of our smartphones. That challenge is that technology now is so elaborated and allows a lot of shapes, allows a lot of extravagant designs, for example, but we are hitting the wall sometimes of imagination, maybe, regarding the functionalities and stuff like that. So now we all probably have very good smartphones with ourselves, but they're still looking the same.
They're almost identical shape,
almost identical,
thickness, etc.
And sometimes I wonder, what is the wall we are hitting? Is it the wall of imagination, or is it the wall of technology, or is it both?
But how did that come to be? I mean, the situation that you described with the boom of CAD software availability, it seems like it should have produced an infinite amount of crazy ideas and creativity, and instead we ended up with the same sort of monolith shapes. How did that CAD software revolution go about? How did what actually changed when people got access to those tools? Did they suddenly decide, oh, okay, let's do black squares?
That was quite a far away from that popularization of CAD towards the black squares. But I think that CAD software is built in a way that, let's say, the engineers are taught to think. So you have to model in a certain way or model in a certain manner. And I think that when you are learning that logic of modeling in the CAD software, it somewhere leads you toward cubes with inserts or
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah, it might be like that. We as people love things that are somehow similar to what we already know. So it's really difficult to push forward, especially if we are simply attacked from all over the world with the mainly the same shapes. So we are getting used to them. So that the smartphone should look like a square-ish brick, but thin enough so that we believe that this phone is a really high tech. If this phone gets
Too thick?
thicker, we believe, or we tend to believe, it's cheap.
Yeah, or
Because-
not sophisticated.
Yes, because there were not many people to think of the thickness of the device. So we probably classify this device as a little bit cheaper, less premium. But people from the design department could have different idea. They wanted you to have your phone in your pocket for a week with a
Yeah.
battery lasting a week.
Yeah.
So that's why it was thicker
Or a better grip or whatever.
or better grip. I think that phones is a really interesting topic because
Yeah, in the 90s or
Yeah,
2000s,
early
phones were
2000s.
crazy.
Yeah.
Different
Amazing.
colors, different shapes, flips.
how did Nokia brand look? That was crazy.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
There were even design themes for phones. There were a theme for fashion. There was a theme for music, for gaming,
For businessmen,
for
like
business. Yeah. So
That was a brave time, sort of creatively. None of those designs lasted, basically, but still, these were times where manufacturers were experimenting a lot. And today,
yes, but I think that we
But
still
s-
can remember some phones from that
Yeah.
period
Sure,
of time.
and
yeah.
we were experimenting in the basically the group of the same ingredients, I would say. Not that big of a screen, keyboard,
Yeah.
the big battery part. Like these were the, let's say,
Yes.
3 very important design factors that were
Yeah,
mixed and matched a different way.
Those phones were still, compared to today's phones, very simple devices, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was something really new in entire industry as a mobile phone, a cell phone. We didn't even have a proper name for that. The name for the phone was taken from how did the network, how was the network built. But now phones, I think this market has simply matured, and that's why the design is not revolutionary from year to year. It's rather an evolution. It's rather something that characterizes more matured markets. I used to be in Coventry a year ago, and I visited a museum there. Coventry is place in Great Britain where a lot of automotive brands were established, or it's best known for Land Rover, Jaguar, and all of different premium brands. But this industrial city was also gathering some objects to their museum, and they started from bicycles. You won't believe how many different ideas for a bicycle people had. Now, when we think of bicycle, we see two wheels that are in line.
A very similar shape, yeah.
Yeah, equal size.
Yes,
Almost.
yes, almost equal in size. But for now, they are also manufactured in different sizes for different people, for different heights. Yeah, they are more. The bike fitting was an invention of recent years, but
the general form factor or the idea of that form
yes,
is same.
But a century ago, there were I don't know how many ideas I saw that were crazy enough not to withstand the time. If we think of a bicycle for two people, we have in our heads that two people are sitting one behind the other.
Yeah.
But there were ideas that the bicycle was two-wheeled but had seats next to each other.
That supports conversations.
Like that's some real acrobatics there.
But that was an idea. It was manufactured. It was introduced to the market, but it simply didn't fit people. So maybe that's why there was a period of time for cell phones where there were a lot of different propositions for people. Which one will last for years? And for some reason, we chose a very simplistic way to operate a phone.
We can say that the phones are or were progressively getting more simply or more minimalistic, I would say. And that's because all those ingredients, the for example, keyboard and the screen are becoming one thing, and this is so convenient and useful that we are not looking for any other solutions. So
yes, and from the manufacturing perspective, phones are also simpler because you don't need to have this many components like keyboards, as you said before, like all the
hinges, like
with the flip phones. Yes,
and mechanically they're simpler, but electronically they're way more complex.
Yes,
right?
But let's look at today's flip phones and today's foldable phones and with bent screens. The history likes to repeat itself.
Yeah,
but in a weird.
Yeah, there are a lot of new patents on hinges covering the elastic screens. But yes, that's why we need something new or some new ideas in particular market so that we can evolve even further.
Yeah, well, phones went through their crazy teenage years in the 90s. Cars went through their crazy teenage years also a bit earlier maybe, but right now cars are also a lot more unified sort of, when it comes to design. So I guess every branch of products or every industry needs to go through a phase of experimentation, testing on their users, what's practical, what's not, what's aesthetic, what's not.
People consider practical, right?
Yeah, what sells well, basically.
Yeah, and there's another important factor, because in some areas, regulations are important.
Regulations, yeah.
Like standards, like safety, all these factors impact design even more than any other imagination of designers. Because for example, a car has to be safe for people. So that's why this distinguishing emblems or distinguishing figures on the front of your hood are no longer visible because they were simply unsafe
Yeah, they would fly away through the window.
through the window, but they could also.
You can be stabbed by the spirit of
Yeah.
victory. Or
Do you remember the Jaguar logo on
Yeah,
the Jaguar on the hood? Let's imagine how that hits a person.
Yeah.
So cars have to be safe, and regulations impact design even more than technologies. Today, I think we have much better technologies than we had previously, of course, but we sometimes cannot do things that we could before.
Yeah.
So this also shows how the technology, regulations, and design are all
Intertwined.
intertwined with each other.
Yeah, but it's crazy. Like everyone knows that we buy extremely expensive phones, then we put them in crazy cases that in some way make them thicker, make them bigger, make them have fancy colors
Because
or
we
even
don't
fancy
want
shapes.
them to break.
and we do not want the same stuff
A
that
phone
everybody
case
has.
being pink with ears has very little to do with it not breaking.
Do you remember?
It's personalization, beyond. It sort of sometimes is like you're making the phone look cheaper, while the designer or the manufacturing company did everything they could for it to look as premium as possible.
Just for the sake of selling on the in the internet with nice pictures, with nice bright materials, with no fingers on the photograph.
Yeah.
Touch your phone with your palm, and you will immediately have
Fingerprints
some
everywhere.
fingerprints.
Yeah.
So I remember in phones there was a time, especially with Nokia.
Those little like chain things, like with beaded butterflies and stuff.
Yeah, but you could also change some, not the case for the phone.
Yeah, you could.
but
the front
yes,
casing,
you could
change colors
Yeah.
with different
like-
prints, etc.
User want to express themselves, so like it's
Yeah.
like an important part of choosing what to buy.
once
but-
again.
but then you
history
don't-
likes to repeat.
But then you don't make the decision of what product you buy based on the character of the product itself, because on the outside you give it character, right?
Yes.
In a way. So personalization, it's still alive. But is it in the future also?
Speaking of personalization,
Yeah, it is like it's that customization thing and the personalization thing. It's I think growing bigger with, for example, phenomenons like mass customization is like a new branch of 3D printing when you are mass producing highly customized objects. So, for example, I mean,
Doesn't like mass production and high customization exclude each other?
not in this case, because we are using technologies that do not use any tooling, so they do not require any special tools and stuff,
Molds.
to molds, for example, to produce certain type of shapes. You are using 3D printing that is very free in that matter. So you can design highly customized for your ergonomic needs. For example, shoe insoles or eyewear stuff that will perfectly fit your head and ears and stuff like that.
So like the core of the product is mass manufactured, but something that's specific to your own personal ergonomics is sort of custom made for you.
Yeah,
or for a group of people.
The whole product is custom made, because what truly is mass customized is design, the 3D model of shoe insole, for example. So, for example, you're going to order your special insoles to your shoes. So your fit is measured, and those measurements are used to create parametrical 3D model of your insole. And so does happen for many hundreds of other people. And when you collect all of those orders, you are 3D printing whole bunch of them. They're basically the same type of a product, the same company, but they're highly specific regarding the ergonomical needs.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that's something completely different than from what was happening or what you guys were talking about before? Like the manufacturing first dictated sort of what designers can do, then designers were pushing the envelope to the other side, and now it's sort of like there's no more pushback. This direction, at least, sort of
Yeah, but
seems like
this
that.
direction is very common, maybe not very common, but common for the objects that are not very complex regarding the construction.
Okay.
So you won't be able to easily manufacture, for example, electronic housing with that. But with some simpler forms like glasses or shoe parts, it's
Okay.
totally okay.
Yet,
Yet.
or so.
Yeah, of
far.
course. I think that we should treat that as simply another technology, another manufacturing technology that enables us to produce things that we weren't able to do before.
Yeah.
So this mass customization area, because it is called mass customization, is not something that will replace all the technologies or all the current mass manufactured components or products, because we simply need some mass manufactured products. But if we are turning from having a lot of different, for example, pair of shoes, we tend to believe that paying more money for more customized and personalized shoes for us is better, not only for us, but also for the planet. And that's why people are shifting their beliefs that they do not have to have the same product that their neighbor has, but they can have something different by means of different technology or manufacturing technology, not by means of buying just another mass manufactured component, but by personalizing this one component, this one product for their personal use. And I believe it is not going to be a technology that will erase all other technologies from our market, because I don't think it had ever happened. Each time new technology becomes popular, the newspapers or magazines are writing, this technology will disrupt all the industry. No, this will enable us to do something more simply.
New tool in a toolbox, basically.
Yes, new tool in the toolbox. So, but tool-less technologies that enables you to manufacture things maybe a little bit more expensive than it was before, still leaves you with no trash behind. And that's a good way of thinking for now.
Okay, so just to sum up, if we started by describing the evolution of this relationship between design and manufacturing, we started by saying that manufacturing was the part that was dictating to the designers what is possible, what are their what's the range they can move in. Then there was a push from the designers when there was the democratization of design software. Suddenly, a lot of more things were possible, and manufacturing had to catch up in a way. And now we are at the point where, as I understood, again, manufacturing, especially in consumer electronics, sort of dictates what makes sense, what's possible to design, how you should think of designing a smartphone, for example. So is the next natural wave would be for the designers to push back again, or will it sort of go both ways or sideways or whatever with the new technologies that you just described?
I don't know how the future will look like in that manner.
I thought that's why you came here.
Ah,
Because you did
but
know.
but I think
I know, but I can't tell you.
Oh,
I
okay.
can only imagine from my perspective. I think that the future will be simply more often require from us to meet design with technology, so that once the technology will be a little bit further, once the design will be a little bit further. And for now, there's one common thing in that area. It's called computing power. Because,
Because those, for example, mass customization requires a lot of computing power.
yes, so we still use excessively or a big amount of energy to mass customize things. It's not for free. Okay, so getting to that level of sophistication requires time or requires money or computing power. So I believe that the progress will be in the fight between technology and design will be mainly dictated by the computing power, because
Okay.
now we've got
We're all slaves to the machine.
yes, we've got digital design tools and digital manufacturing tools. So if we are going digital, this means that that possibilities are becoming endless. Of course, it's in physical world saying that there are endless possibilities of solving a problem is simply not possible, because you've got to take into account the business side of
Yeah,
design.
but while thinking about styling, for example, or shapes or any other aspects of design, there basically are endless possibilities, right?
Basically, yes.
Not reasonable sometimes, but
Sure.
possible.
Sure. It is said that everything is possible. It's always a matter of time, money, and people. But
Time, money, people, and computing.
and
powers.
computing power, we could add another level of sophistication to that equation.
Design no longer waits for a manufacturing technology to be available. Designers keep pushing manufacturing further and further, as they did before, and manufacturing keeps giving new tools for the designers to work with. It no longer seems like a tug of war though, more like a synchronized dance, let's say. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out more episodes of IDology, the Industrial Design Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and all podcast streaming platforms.